Well, joining me now is former White House Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at Bondi Partners, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, before we get into anything else, I want to get your analysis on the twin scandals, or issues if you don't think they've quite hit the scandal level yet. You've got the classified documents and Hunter Biden. The first one, Mick, the document seems to be about the president's own carelessness, while the Hunter Biden stuff, when you take away all the considerable sleaze, seems to be about the potential for real financial corruption. So my question is this. The Hunter stuff about payments and arranging access to the highest levels of government for foreign companies absolutely stinks, yet it is the issue of the poorly kept documents that is getting legs in the press. Now, you've been around Washington a long time. Do you smell something fishy here?
At a bunch of different levels. James, by the way, it's always great to see you. Great to see that little Pierre Jean-Pierre clip there. When the press secretary to all the lawyers, that means she doesn't know the answer, because she is the White House press secretary and the lawyers work for the White House. So when she says she refers you to the legal counsel, that means she has no idea what to say, because they're going to refer back to her. Look, now the thing does sort of, it starts to stink. Keep in mind, there's a missing piece here. Maybe you can pull it out later on and show it next week, where Joe Biden, as vice president, talks about bringing pressure on the attorney general in Ukraine in order to get them to stop an investigation. That's where this sort of ends. That's people are trying to draw a line between what's on Hunter's laptop and what Joe Biden was actually doing when he was vice president of the United States. So that's why this is a big deal. It's more than just the unfortunate story of a famous person's son who's addicted to drugs. The question is, was Joe Biden helping Hunter Biden, giving information to foreign countries, influencing a government policy towards foreign countries? And was there stuff on that laptop that could hurt American interests? So it is a big story, sort of covered up now by all the sensationalized scandal.
Well, yeah, indeed. Look, I think you're right. I know exactly the clip you're talking about, but also it's not just about, that putting pressure on Ukraine to fire a prosecutor. It was also about all of the meetings that Joe Biden seemed to have with people that seem to have been orchestrated by Hunter Biden while he was in office. I mean, that sort of thing really should concern people, I think, more than it seems to have captured the attention of the press.
Yeah, listen, there's Watergate is a seminal turning point in American politics, because it's the time where we learned once and for all there's two rules that you sort of follow when you deal with situations like this. Number one, follow the money. Okay, so you got to figure out who got paid, how the money got moved around, who the big guy was who supposedly was getting payments. Follow the money, rule number one. Rule number two from Watergate, it's never really the crime. It's always the cover-up. So I think the Biden team is really eager to move on from this. The media is eager to move on. Remember, most of the American media said that the laptop wasn't a real story. They refused to cover it. Twitter banned it as part of their pre-election policies and so forth, because they bought that comment that this was Russian disinformation. So this is a big story. It is sort of bathed in scandal, so it looks like it's less important than it is. But I'm glad that now that Republicans are in charge of the House, we actually may get a full accounting of what happened with this laptop and everything connected to it.
Indeed. Now, I want to sort of move on to this other sort of big story right now, which is Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Now, Donald Trump, Mick, has called out DeSantis on Truth Social and called him a rhino globalist, criticizing him for his response during the pandemic. Now, I'm of two minds on this, because Trump's still polling well among Republicans, but it seems to suggest that A, DeSantis may have an issue here, but B, the Republicans might have a big problem in that how do they get Trump out of the way if there's a mood within the party that DeSantis is the wave of the future?
Yeah, number one, you're never going to get Trump out of the way. There's no real authority in the Republican Party that goes to anybody and says you can't run or you have to run. Donald Trump will make that decision for himself. But this struck me, the way this really, I mean, we all know how Donald Trump works, right? He picks a target, he attacks that target. I get asked today why he wasn't beating up on Nikki Haley, who is going to announce her presidential election right now. That's not how Trump works. He picks one person, beats up on them until they're out of the way, and then he moves on to the next target. This attack on Ron DeSantis is especially ham-fisted. When Trump went after Jeb Bush in 2016 as being low energy, it sank in because it sort of had a ring of truth to it. When he attacked Ted Cruz for being Lion Ted Cruz, that sort of had a kernel of truth because Ted was talking about all sorts of crazy things at the time. No one believes that Ron DeSantis is a rhino globalist. So it's almost like the president is out of practice and hasn't found his footing yet, but it's not a particularly effective attack. I don't think it moves the needle at all in the 2024 election.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right about that. I mean, Jeb Bush, though, calling him low energy, that was definitely not fake news. But Ron DeSantis responded to the criticism. Have a listen to this.
I roll out of bed. I have people attacking me from all angles. It's been happening for many, many years. You know, the good thing about it is when you're an elected executive, you have to make all kinds of decisions. You got to steer that ship. And the good thing is that the people are able to render a judgment on that, whether they reelect you or not. And I'm happy to say, you know, in my case, not only did we win reelection, we won with the highest percentage of the vote that any Republican governor candidate has in the history of the state of Florida.
I reckon DeSantis is playing this pretty smart. What do you think?
I've seen that clip before. That's absolutely brilliant. It's sort of a jab at Donald Trump saying, I got reelected, you didn't, but also reminds people why they like him so much. He's pretty much a no-nonsense kind of guy. He's like, look, if you make tough decisions, there's going to be people that you upset, but at the end of the day, it's the voters that matter. The voters reelected me because they liked me, and they didn't reelect Donald Trump. Look, I've talked to friends of mine in Congress who live in purplish states, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and they thought that Donald Trump cost them 3 to 5 percentage points in those midterm elections a couple of months back. You talked to the Republicans in Florida, and they said being on the ticket with Ron DeSantis helped them by 3 to 5 percentage points. That's a big difference. So, no, DeSantis is right where he wants to be. The fact that Trump is attacking him is actually going to help raise DeSantis's sort of profile nationwide and could help him ultimately. This is a rare circumstance where Trump, I think, has made a mistake. I'd be curious to see how quickly he adjusts.
It'll be very interesting to see if he will adjust or if he can adjust if he's so locked into that playbook, which you described very smartly. But let's move on. You mentioned a moment ago, South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is poised to become the second Republican after Trump to announce a 2024 bid. So the race is already starting to heat up. What do you make of this? How do you think she will go? And does she have enough name recognition outside Republican circles to really make a go of it?
She does. Nikki's a very capable candidate. She's probably the highest profile female Republican, maybe the highest profile female politician in the country after Kamala Harris. So she's a very viable candidate. The fact that Trump is still attacking DeSantis tells me that Trump has data that DeSantis is still the biggest risk to him, and that feels like it might be right. Nikki was the governor of a small state. She was the UN ambassador for a short period of time. Ron got a tremendous amount of coverage in Florida, a major state during COVID, won a huge reelection, et cetera. So it feels like Ron is the biggest challenger, but Nikki certainly is in the race. Mike Pompeo just released a book attacking Nikki Haley and attacking John Bolton, another potential presidential candidate. Mike Pence is sort of making noises. So it's all starting to come together. My guess is, James, by this summer, you've got at least 6 significant major candidates for president on the Republican side of the ledger.
Now, I've noticed Mike Pompeo out there quite a bit lately. He's really been upping his public profile and seemed to have had a bit of an image makeover last year. Is he going to make a go, do you reckon?
He is. By the way, the image makeover, Mike's a friend of mine. Mike's lost like 100 pounds. Yeah. But it's not to change his image. Mike was at a West Point grad, which is our military academy. He used to be in fantastic physical shape when he was a younger man. No, he's absolutely running. There's no question. He has to run because he can't stay relevant until 2028. Nikki Haley has to run because she can't stay relevant until 2028. Ron DeSantis could actually wait because he's governor now until 2026. Tim Scott can wait because he's a senator until 2028. Mike Pence has to run right now in order to stay relevant. So you sort of look at those dynamics. But Mike Pompeo is running. He'd be a really good candidate. I don't know where his lane is to victory, but he's a very competent, very intellectual guy, and I think he'll add a lot to the debate on the campaign trail.
Yeah, no, look, I agree with you. I've been a big fan of Mike Pompeo for a while, but It seems to me, listening to you talk about this, Mick, that both the Democrats and the Republicans both have this kind of problem of trying to get somebody out of the way, Donald Trump and Joe Biden. This is a pretty unique situation where almost both sides are in these kind of, at least on the Democrat side, a phony war, the Republicans in a real war for the nomination.
Yeah, and I think both parties are afraid that they'll be the last one to adapt to the next generation. Trump versus a much younger, successful Democrat governor would be Trump versus Biden is probably a losing argument anyway, but he could get crushed by a younger generational change type of Democrat. Same is true for Biden. Biden can probably beat Trump, but gets trounced by a Ron DeSantis or a Tim Scott, the next generation. So both parties are looking for ways to pass the baton to the next generation while still saving face. Trump is 76. I think Biden is 80. The benches of both parties are strong with folks in their mid-40s to late 50s. The real question is, will either or both of them be able to make that change this time, or will they have change forced upon them by losing in 2024 and then have to go into 2028?
Mick Mulvaney, fascinating analysis as always. Thank you so much for joining me today on the U.S. Report. We still have plenty to come, though, on the show. But first, before we go, Joe Biden gives us a little class in statistics and biology.
More than half the women in my cabinet, more than half the people in my cabinet, more than half the women in my administration are women.
More than half the women are women. Who knew?